I've spoken about how I feel on the Last Night toy line before and how it's very weird, but how it has some real nice bangers in it as well. Well, this is one of those figures that's very highly regarded within that toy line, Voyager Megatron. This figure was one people were raving about back when it came out. Like, I got this one at Universal Studios because it was always sold out here. That's how popular this toy was. The Last Night Megs here looks really good. He's a bit clunky in the legs due to the transformation, but it's not something that bothers me that much. They are a bit gappy, and I can see that bothering some people. The color on this I like. It's very subtle. The gunmetal color they use is great, and the little bits of gold really help break it up. Not too much for it to be overshadowing the gunmetal gray, but just enough for it to look cohesive. I do want to add some battle damage to this though, because it desperately needs it. Mine has a red face because young me did that, but he also really needed that stripe. But the sculpt is awesome. I do wish there was a version of this that had the masked head, because I much prefer the battle mask look. I know the bigger knockoff of this has like the switchable thing, but I'm not buying that. I love all the angles and shaping, the asymmetry. It's messy, but also feels coherent. I do wish he had a waist joint. I feel like this dude desperately needs one in my opinion, because it would really help him get him into some wicked sword poses. Speaking of the sword, this is my favorite Transformers melee weapon. Look at it. It's so cool. To me, the standard one that the toy comes with is a little too small, so you can even give it the leaders, because I also have the leaders, if you want to pony up the cash for one. It's a pretty meh toy, though. I don't know if you want to do that. Or you could grab yourself a 3D printed one or something like I did. This is a sword from Lockbot 3DP on Etsy, who makes a ton of cool weapons for your toys, and sent over a bunch of them for me to try, and they look really cool. If there is one thing I would maybe say change about the Megatron axe that he made, it's maybe give it an angled tab so it can tab into the back, but it's also like $6 Canadian, so it's really good for what you get. I'll link the store below so you can check it out, and if you use code TOYGUY10 you get 10% off your order in July, so definitely check that out. They are 3D printed though, so like you will get some of those 3D printed things of like support struts, but they're 3D printed. You could sand it down real easily yourself. I do feel with a bigger axe, he looks much nicer, especially if you want to get him in that pose from the movie where he's like asking for his crew all Suicide Squad. Like, what was that scene? That was such a weird thing to just throw into the movie. It didn't feel like it fit, but it's also like the best scene in the movie. That movie, I don't understand what was going on in their heads when they created that. I know it was supposed to be 3 hours long and then they cut it down because the studio complained or whatever, but it's still just so strange. I don't know. And the toy line was also strange. that movie, I didn't understand it. One thing I really like about this is for mainly Studio Series collectors, this fits quite well. I do hope we get a new take on this guy though in Studio Series, because I'd love to see one with more modern engineering that gives him better articulation and a little bit more of that detail that we want. But it does work in a Studio Series collection quite well. I feel like that scales really nicely with the rest of the offerings. I just love the robot designs. Of all the movie Megatron designs we got, this one is my most favorite. It's so cool looking. Posing on him is pretty good for the time, but he is missing wrists and a waist by today's standards. He does have a really deep ankle tilt, and the arms have a really wide range of motion. And even after all these years, the joints haven't become loose at all, which is really nice to see. One thing I always encourage people to do is move your toys around every once in a while, because if you leave them standing there on the shelf for a year and then you pick it up and move it around, especially with ball joints, they're going to degrade and become a lot looser. So definitely pick up your toys and move them around. Having said that, I haven't done that to this toy in a very long time, and I picked it up and the joints are still strong, which says something about this figure. The material the toy is made out of feels very different from the rest of the Last Night toy line. It feels more solid and secure than other toys. Like, if I hold this next to Nitro Zeus or Scorn, Nitro Zeus and Scorn's plastic feels very similar to each other. But Megatron feels a lot more sturdy. His plastic feels more dense and weighty, and it's closer to that Cybertron plastic, which is the plastic that I think is the best. So transformation is not what you'd expect. The toy does a very cool arm flip to swing them both behind the legs and make the legs the wings. It's just so satisfying when you get everything folded away to make this a genuinely incredible jet mode. It's not incomprehensible like movie 1 or trying to be a triple changer without the changing part like Revenge of the Fallen. It knows it wants to be a fast jet and it looks the part. I do quite like the way the jet turned out. The limbs are hidden away just enough to clean up the jet mode quite a bit, but the feet do still stick out. Kind of wish there was a way for them to like fold underneath the silhouette of the wings to be flush, but here they are as an eyesore. The sword does store on the top too, and if mine wasn't slightly bent out of shape, it would be a lot better. It would blend a lot better, but mine out of the box came a little bit warped. One of the things that I forgot to mention about the transformation that's extremely satisfying is folding the hip skirt flaps into place in vehicle mode. Pushing them in is just, it's such a nice feeling to push those things in. It's a really sick figure. I genuinely love it and think any movie collector needs one of these in their collection. If you like the Knight designs, that is. It's a cool and fun toy that also looks great with old and new movie toys, which is very difficult to do because the movie aesthetic has changed slightly, and I'm not talking about like Bumblebee movie versus Bayverse. I'm talking about the way that the toys are built and designed. If you were to put Dark of the Moon Sideswipe in your Studio Series collection, he wouldn't fit. He's too big, he's not painted well enough, he's missing a lot of details. But the Last Knight Megatron fits quite well with that modern collection while also looking great with the old stuff because he was designed back in that time. So I definitely think he's worth a pickup. I would say 50 sealed Canadian at max for one of these though. I wouldn't pay more than that. But that's been my look at the Last Knight Voyager Megatron. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.